Well, Nick, how you doing back there?
I'd be willing to bet that when you think about California, you probably think about Hollywood and movie stars and beaches and surfers. And you might even think about wine too. And there's a good reason for that. California produces nearly 90% of all of the wine made in America. And if you know me, well, you know that I love wine.
Not everybody has wine in their truck after a hunt, but these guys do. To the Grand Slam.
And you know that I love to hunt. So when I heard about a place in California that has an incredible story that combines both of those things, I said, sign me up. And that is what brings me to California's southern wine region, to Paso Robles, California, to a magical place called Steinbeck Vineyards. Because here is one of the rare places in the world where you can enjoy world-class wine and world-class blacktail deer hunting all in the same place. When I arrive at Steinbeck, I'm met by my host and hunting guide, Ryan Newkirk. Ryan is of the 6th generation of farmers in his family to grow grapes in this area.
This is awesome.
After we get settled, Ryan takes me for a drive around the property that evening, and I start getting my very first glance at the blacktail deer here. And needless to say, I start to get pretty excited. Ryan takes me up to a hilltop that overlooks the entire vineyard, which encompasses over 500 acres. Once we're parked, he opens up a bottle of wine that was grown and made right here. And it occurs to me that if my wife was here, this would be an awfully romantic moment. But she's not, and so it isn't. But as we take our first sips of wine, one thing is for sure. As I look out at all of these vines and think about the blacktail deer that live within them, if I'm honest, I'm a little overwhelmed by it all.
Cheers. Cheers. When you told me we were hunting in the vineyard, I figured it was like around the vineyard. My Minnesota whitetail butt never realized we're hunting the deer in the grapes. So we saw them driving up here. They're all over in there.
It's about 500 acres of planted vineyard. It's quite the cat and mouse game. There's almost 400,000 bushes on this property. They can disappear. They can move across those rows at full speed, where for us, it's like crossing a fence every time.
Yeah.
It's not hard to spot them, but actually pulling off a good kill shot is quite the challenge.
This is my first time in California wine country, and immediately the second you drive through that gate and you see these vines, there's something romantic about grapes, isn't there?
I don't know if primal would be the right word, but it triggers something in people. I think it's because there's so many variables. You know, when you go to a grocery store and you want to buy broccoli, you're not looking at thousands of different potential combinations for broccoli.
Sure.
With wine, whether it's the rootstocks that we plant, the varietals we select, you know, how we grow the grapes.
Right.
Once it's in the winemaker's hands, what barrels does he use? How does he ferment? I mean, it just, the variables are endless.
And then the added bonus for you is it also makes big fat blacktails.
Big blacktails. You're gonna be amazed when you see just the fat on these things. We kind of jokingly call them Wagyu venison.
Yeah. Well, here's to big fat blacktails and growing grapes.
Cheers.
California, baby.
My day ends back at the ranch house where I'll be staying, and here I meet the rest of the Steinbeck family, and I immediately like their style. Steaks on the grill, and I mean big juicy steaks, and of course, no shortage of wine. But I'm gonna have to pace myself because tomorrow I have an important job to do.
Cheers, guys. Welcome to Steinbeck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tomorrow morning, I set out on my first ever blacktail deer hunt, and I'd like to do that without a headache. The blacktail deer is a species that you maybe have never heard of. It's a subspecies of the mule deer, more about the size of a whitetail, that live on the western edges of the United States. Now I find myself on a vineyard outside of Paso Robles, California, in search of one of these blacktail for my very first time. And as you can see, this isn't the type of deer hunting that I'm used to. The process for hunting the blacktails here at Steinbeck is a combination of glassing from high points to locate the deer, and then driving in the truck slowly along the rows to try and pinpoint those deer. It becomes very clear on this first morning that there is no shortage of deer here. Today is opening day of the California blacktail season, and while we're driving along, Ryan tells me that he's especially excited because there's a particular buck that he's been after for a couple of years that he's recently been seeing in a particular area.
He seems to like this spot. Oh, there's a good one.
That's a good buck. That's gotta be a shooter, right?
He's a good buck, but he's not the one we're looking for. And there he is. That's the one we're looking for. Let's back off a ways. See if we can figure out how to get a sneak on him.
We drive away slowly in hopes that we don't scare the deer off, and then we make a plan. We drive almost a quarter mile away, and then we position ourselves to be able to make an approach with the wind in our face. We use all the cover and terrain available, and I send up a Hail Mary that that buck is still there when we emerge. Luckily, as we come up out of a ditch,
See him?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I got him.
Ryan spots the buck, who has now moved closer to us, just 300 yards away. We cross under a couple of rows of vines to get in the same row that he's in, and I manage to get set up for a shot. But there's one serious problem. I have a clear shot at the deer, but I'm worried about the buildings on the other side of that rise. Eventually, the buck walks into the vines and out of our lives, and all because of a lesson I learned in my hunter safety course when I was 12 years old.
That is possibly the most frustrating moment of my entire hunting career. A buck that he's been looking for years, sitting right there, and I can't shoot him because he's skylined. And all I can hear is my hunter safety instructor going, "Don't shoot stuff on the skyline."
We got a good look at him.
Yeah, thanks. That's not a consolation right now.
These grapevines and this area that I'm hunting in have an incredible history. Californians have been growing grapes and producing wine since at least 1769. The state was home to two varietals of native grapes, but neither of them produced wine that tasted very good. So over the next 100 years or so, farmers and winemakers here experimented with planting vines that were brought over from places like Italy and France. And those people included some of Ryan's family who emigrated here in the late 1800s, who were some of the very first people to plant vines in the now famous wine-growing region around Paso Robles. Today, California produces over 17 million gallons of wine a year. So much, in fact, that if California was its own country, it would be the fourth largest wine producer in all of the world.
It doesn't take long walking through these vines to see some of the damage that the deer can cause. It's got to be a love-hate relationship with them here, right? Because I'm sure it's no small amount of grapes that they destroy every year, right?
Yeah, and the bigger impact that they have is actually eating the canopy. You can see in a situation like this where they've eaten all these leaves off.
Yeah.
And what that does is it creates a situation where this fruit that's attached to this cane won't ripen as it should because there's not enough leaves to produce.
And then I see some actual grapes being eaten here too, right? So they'll eat the grapes as well?
Yeah, and what it seems like is probably about 80 to 90% of their diet is the green vegetation, and then a small percentage is the fruit, whether it's for, the sugar or whether it's for moisture. Hard to say.
Makes the deer taste good, but also hurts your pocketbook a little bit.
They're pre-marinated, and so a certain amount of it is a worthwhile trade-off.
How much money worth of crop do deer eat a year for you?
Last year was pretty catastrophic. It was almost 20% of our revenue that we were down because of deer damage.
That's crazy.
Yep. And it was an exceptional year, and obviously that's not sustainable. So having guys like you out here to help us try to remedy that situation is good.
Helping the winemaker one deer at a time.
Doing us a favor.
Every business and every family have a story. And here at Steinbeck Vineyards and Winery, well, things are no different. Their story begins with Barbara and William Ernst. They moved from Germany to America and ended up in California in 1884, where they farmed cattle and grain, grew a family, and grew a vineyard. And from that vineyard, they grew their own wine. 130 years and 7 generations later, things haven't changed all that much. And to learn more about that incredible story, I meet up with Barbara and William Ernst's great-grandson, Howie Steinbeck, who's going to give me a very special tour in a very unique vehicle. What year is this Jeep?
I've had it since 1960.
1960.
Howie Howie drove me all over the farm. He told me that he learned from his grandfather when he was a young boy not only about farming, but also about work ethic and the value of a good day's hard work. He showed me some of the first grapes that he planted on this farm, and he told me about the well that he dug himself to water those vines. Howie told me an incredible story about the time a B-26 bomber crashed just 200 yards away from his home when he was just 17 years old.
Then where the flag is flying up there, that's where the B-26 bomber crashed.
There was a B-26 bomber that crashed right there.
Crashed right there, yeah.
The plane got lost in the clouds and 5 crew members jumped from it after an engine failed. One of those crew members did not survive, and it was a young Howie who found the body on their property. I was fascinated by this man that has experienced more life lessons than 100 people put together. Hard work and family are the cornerstones of the Steinbeck tradition. Those vines that were planted by Howie's great-grandparents were the seed that started a family legacy. It's said that behind every great man is a strong woman, and Howie is quick to tell you that he is no different. He was born and raised on this property in a house that was built in 1921, and they raised their kids in that same house. Eventually, they handed that house down to their daughter Cindy, and in the late 90s, he built his wife a new house in a place that was very special and fulfilled a very old promise.
I married my high school sweetheart. We would sit on that hill and watch air shows out at the airport. And 2 years before we were married, I promised her I'd build her a house there someday.
And you did.
It only took 42 years. Yeah.
One of the most interesting and ironic things that I learned during my drive with Howie is that he's a farmer first and had no intention of making wine here on the farm at all. It wasn't until the early 2000s when his daughter Cindy came back to the farm that the winemaking part of Steinbeck began because of her vision. So after hunting the next morning, I meet up with Cindy, who shows me the Steinbeck winemaking operation firsthand so I can learn more about this aspect of this family's incredible history. When you think about the amount of years that your family has been within a few miles of here, is that a burden to carry?
Both a burden and a blessing. It's a burden in that my dad and I are 4th generation and 5th generation. And we just better pull up our bootstraps and get her done if we want to pass it on to the next generations. And when I say that, I mean my grandkids and even further than that. Yeah. I'd like to be the middle of something much bigger than me. And so that's the burden part. The blessing part is I'm right here right now, and I get to do this. I get to farm with my kids. I get to make wine with my kids and work with my parents. What could be better than that? So our history essentially launches us toward what we believe has to be a visionary future.
Well, right now I can see my future, and it looks to me like it involves a few glasses of wine. Cindy gave me a full sampling of almost all the different kinds of wines they make here at Steinbeck. There were white ones, pink ones, and a few different red ones, including this one called the Crash, which commemorates the big bomber that crashed just a few hundred yards from here and the young man who died in that crash. Well, it's excellent.
Well, thank you.
Wonderful. Cheers.
Really appreciate it.
Here's to the Steinbecks.
And we so appreciate your presence here with us. It's awesome.
So much fun. Well, yeah, we'll have a couple more of these.
There you go.
You know, you never know what happens. You don't know me very well, but this sometimes leads to bad decisions. So.
All right, this morning I'm pretty excited because something unexpected has happened. They have decided that it's time to harvest a small batch of grapes for the champagne that they make at Steinbeck. And I get to be a part of that, which is really cool. It's a little early in season, but when, you know, the grapes are ready apparently. So I'm gonna get to pick grapes today to help make people drunk.
I love getting to try new things, and this is definitely a first for me. I'm handed the tools of the trade, which is just a clippers and a bin, and then Ryan takes me out to the vines to put me to work.
All right, so what we're gonna do is just come in, each cluster, clip it right at the stem, drop it into the pan.
That's it.
That's it.
Grape growers have a basic rule of thumb that says that one vine produces enough grapes for about 10 bottles of wine. Since there's about 40 grape clusters that grow on one vine, You can do some quick math and figure out that every 4 snips I take is a bottle of wine for somebody in the world to enjoy. In this case, it's sparkling wine, and to whoever it is that gets to drink the wine that these grapes make, well, you're welcome.
I've been out here for like an hour now with everybody, and the overarching feeling that I get, the vibe I get, is one of complete happiness. There's an excitement around everybody. They're having fun and they're excited about this. And it just really goes to show there's something special about these grapes. I don't know what it is, but even the people that are picking it are excited about it. Delicate little fruit. It's truly magical. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's that we're all helping people get drunk.
I'm surrounded by great people with great attitudes and a non-stop work ethic. And at one point, I stopped long enough to watch some of those people work, and I realized that I was going way slower than they were, which led me to ask Ryan a couple of questions about the economics of this operation. You know, just in case I was thinking about a career change.
So we pay piece rate for this. Guys are typically getting about 7 to 8 cents a pound to pick these grapes. And there's guys that'll make $40 an hour. You see what professionals can do. And
yeah, these guys are already all the way down there.
We're sitting back here. I don't think you're making minimum wage, buddy.
Of course.
I continued earning minimum wage for a little while longer, and by the time we were finished, it was about time to head out for the afternoon hunt. Finally, it's time to go do something that I'm halfway decent at. We spend the better part of 2 hours walking and glassing, and then we locate a bunch of deer, including a few bucks that look pretty promising. We get in the truck for a closer look, and immediately we find deer, and then the bucks keep getting bigger and bigger until we find exactly what we're looking for.
All right, he's in kind of an interesting spot. So let's just run up that ways and park, and we'll walk back this way and see what happens.
So we have spotted that big buck that we've been looking for, the one that we saw the other day. And now the pressure is on because you have a major history with this buck, right?
We've had an eye on it for 2+ years.
A bit of a vendetta?
Yeah.
Yeah, so no pressure at all.
The hardest part about hunting in this vineyard is the complete lack of visibility. When you're deep into the vines, it's almost like you're inside of a maze, and it's very easy to get disoriented and lose track of where you are. Lucky for me, Ryan has been doing this his whole life, and he knows perfectly what he's doing. Ryan delivered me quietly into the perfect position 120 yards away from the buck, and he has no idea we're there.
He's down. He's down.
Are you kidding me right now?
Great shot.
Look at where I am right now. I'm in a vineyard with a bunch of grapes around. I mean, unbelievable. I don't even know what else to say.
Grapes and wine. Some of the biggest moments in history are centered around them. And now here in California, I've made some of my own history.
Welcome to California.
And as I walk up on my very first blacktail deer, it hits me. Over the past few days, I've not only experienced the history of this place and this family, but I just experienced part of their traditions. Because these deer, hunted among these grapes, have put meat on the table for this family since they moved here. Now it's time to experience another of their traditions. We take the deer back to the house, and as we begin to skin and dress the deer, Cindy takes some choice cuts and fries them up for us, which is a tradition they've done for years.
While everybody's skinning, she comes in and cooks up the heart and the liver.
But the tradition doesn't stop there, because then they bring out a bottle of wine made from the same grapes of the same vines that the deer is shot amongst. In my case, Cabernet Sauvignon.
You've chosen this 2016 Steinbeck cab. Just congratulations for killing a nice
amazing.
big buck.
And then we partake in the most ancient tradition of all. We toast to a successful hunt. One of my favorite hunts I've ever been on, and I owe it all to some grapes.
To grapes, bucks, and family, and friends.
Cheers.
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 Awesome.